I would think that the company that made Minecraft would endorse a book of a much higher caliber. Minecraft. It's everywhere. Even if you've never played Minecraft before, odds are you've at least heard the name once at some point in your life. It's that popular. If there's anything that Minecraft has in spades, it's merchandise, toys, clothes, bed covers. If it exists, there's a Minecraft version of it. However, if there's one bit of Minecraft merchandise that doesn't seem to be anywhere near as popular, it has to be the Minecraft novels. I didn't know these things existed until somewhat recently. I think part of the reason why I didn't even know about them was because I didn't think to look for them, and I'm sure most people wouldn't. Minecraft is the kind of game where you make your own story. There's no real in-game plot to speak of. You just enter a randomly generated overworld, you gather blocks, make items out of those blocks, and then go from there. So then how do you give Minecraft a story without turning it into a Telltale game series? I'm not joking. Minecraft Story Mode by Telltale Games is a thing. So how do you give Minecraft a story? Apparently you give it to World War Z author Max Brooks. And in return, Max Brooks gave us this. Minecraft, The Island. Fun little fact, Max Brooks was inspired to write this novel because of his son's playthrough of Minecraft. I guess his son provided him all the tools he needed to break his writer's block. So how well does Minecraft translate into a novel? Well, gather your diamond pickaxe, cause we're about to dig deep into Minecraft, The Island. Now, near the beginning of the book, it says, the following is based on true events. I assume they're saying that Max Brooks based the story off of his son's playthrough, or maybe Max Brooks did his own thing. For all I know, he wrote it as a joke in the novel. I don't know. Anyway, the story starts off with an intro by the main character. I wouldn't expect you to believe the world I'm about to describe, although you're reading these words means you're already here. Maybe you've been in this world for a while, but just discovered the island. Or maybe, like it was for me, the island is your introduction to this world. If you're alone, confused, and scared out of your mind, then you're exactly where I was on my first day. This world can seem like a maze and sometimes like a bully, but the truth is that it's a teacher, and its trials are just lessons in disguise. That's why I've left this book behind, so my journey can help you with yours. And it's no wonder that the main character left the guide. In the first chapter, they wake up deep underwater and drowning. They swim to the surface as fast as they can, and when they finally get to dry land, they notice that everything around them is made out of blocks, from the sun to the clouds to the land itself. The island was square, or rather, it was made of squares. Everything. Sand, dirt, rocks, even those things I first thought were trees. Everything was a combination of cubes. Okay, I said, refusing to believe what I was seeing. Just need a minute is all. Just a minute. Standing in waist-high water, breathing, blinking, I waited for my eyes to clear. I was sure that any minute, all those harsh right angles would return to soft, curvy normalness. They didn't. The main character thinks everything looks the way it does because of a head injury. So they put their hand on their head to examine the head injury, and they realize that their hand, along with the rest of their body, is blocky just like everything else around them. Now naturally, this completely freaks them out. But the biggest shock for them is that they can't remember who they are or how they got there in the first place. So now the main character must survive this strange blocky world by befriending animals, fighting monsters, and finding food and shelter. The story clearly takes inspiration from Robinson Crusoe or Castaway, and that the main character is stuck on an island. A little side note here, the main character from this point on will be referred to as MC for main character, and you'll see why soon enough. You know, like how in The Walking Dead, zombies weren't a thing until the zombie apocalypse happened? Well, in Minecraft The Island, Minecraft wasn't a thing until MC showed up in the overworld. And this being a blocky Minecraft overworld, the physics that MC is used to in real life don't apply in this world. MC's own body is limited to in-game movement from Minecraft. Every time they try to use their hands to interact with the environment, it's always reduced to a rapid punching motion. The same punching motion used in Minecraft to break down blocks. There's a scene where MC tries to pet a sheep and they punch it instead. It was pretty funny. And the physics of the world don't just affect MC's body, they affect the environment as well. When MC punches out the middle of a tree trunk, for example, the tree doesn't fall down like it would in real life, it stays afloat. The idea of being trapped in a Minecraft overworld and having to survive and adapt to the environment and to one's own body, that sounds like a really cool idea in theory. That said, there are times in the book's overworld where the rules are downright inconsistent with the game that it's based off of. At one point, MC tries to run away from a bunch of monsters, but they end up tripping, face-planting against a tree, and they end up twisting their ankle. Tripping, face-planting, and ankle twisting aren't things in Minecraft. Before I forget, let's talk about MC's amnesia. It's also inconsistent. I tried to imagine waking up in my home, in my life, but it was all gone. I could remember the world, the real world of soft round shapes, of people and houses and cars and lives. I just couldn't remember me in it. My vision narrowed as an invisible fist closed around my lungs. Who am I? Tension pulsed up through the veins in my neck. I could feel the skin on my face, the roots of my teeth. Dizzy, nauseous, I staggered back against the base of the hill. What was my name? What did I look like? Was I old? Was I young? Looking down at my boxy body, I couldn't determine anything. Was I a man or a woman? Was I even human? What am I? The thread snapped. My mind collapsed. Where? Who? What? And now the final question. Why? I screeched up at the bright square sun. Why can't I remember? Why am I different? Why am I here? Why is all this happening to me? Why? All those questions and more will not be answered in this book. I hesitate to call that a spoiler. A spoiler in Amnesiac stories usually reveals something huge about the Amnesiac themselves. Maybe they were involved in some sort of incident, or they used to work for the government, kind of like in the Bourne Identity. But even in the Bourne Identity, that little tidbit of info was presented somewhat early in the story. But the way the amnesia is conveyed in Minecraft the Island makes little to no sense. As mentioned in the passage I read, MC doesn't remember anything about themselves. They don't remember their name, what they look like, what their age is, what gender they are, and you find out none of these things in the story. By the end of the book, I felt like I was cheated that no real big revelation about MC was revealed. I mean, you do find out something, kind of, but it's underwhelming, and I'll explain near the end of the video. Something that would have helped the book greatly would have been for MC to have other characters besides themselves, other sentient characters beside themselves to interact off of. MC is the only real human character. All the other characters are either monsters or animals. And when MC talks to the monsters or animals, it's always a series of one-sided conversations. The only times the monsters or animals talk to MC is what MC would imagine that they would say, if that makes any kind of sense. Maybe this was done on purpose to serve the theme of loneliness in the story, but every time MC talks to an animal or a monster, I just really wanted to see them talk to another sentient character. The story could have used some villagers. The ones who are always like, those villagers. The language barrier that MC experiences with the villagers would have been an interesting thing for them to overcome. If MC were a fully fleshed out character with an intact memory and a physical description, it would have been acceptable to have just animals and monsters for them to talk to. But because MC is virtually a blank slate with no physical description and no memory, it's just really hard to get attached. One of the reasons I think MC is given amnesia and no real physical description is so that the reader can come up with their own details for MC, to make them as relatable to the reader as possible. Things like that or whatever. It's almost like one of those video games where you make your own custom character. Technically speaking, Minecraft is kind of like one of those video games where you do that sort of thing, but the problem is, this isn't a video game. It's a novel. It's not my job or the reader's job to determine the characteristics of the main character. That's the author's job. That's Max Brooks's job. I want to know what the author has in mind for what the main character looks like in a story. Instead, we have a custom character without the character creator menu. By taking out the meat and substance of a character, you're left with someone who's bare bones, much like the skeletons that MC has to fight. What makes MC's amnesia especially confusing, though, is that they may not remember a single thing about themselves, but they remember a bunch of pop culture references. For example, there's a scene where MC tries to break down a stone block with their bare hands. When it doesn't work, they try to think of something that will break down the block. Some kind of tool was the obvious answer, like the castaways in all those stories. But they usually had a whole shipwreck of supplies, or a hatchet, or at least a talking volleyball. For those of you who don't know, the movie Castaway has a character named Wilson the Volleyball. Wilson is basically Tom Hanks's character's only friend the entire time they're on the island. The reason why I bring that up is because not everyone is going to get that reference. Minecraft the Island is clearly aimed toward a younger demographic. You could argue that the reference to Wilson the Volleyball is aimed toward older audiences. I would counter-argue that the story would be a whole lot better without that reference at all. First of all, people who are familiar with Castaway don't need to be reminded that Minecraft the Island clearly takes inspiration from that movie. By making a reference to Castaway, the story is telling something the audience already knows. That point doesn't need to be driven further, otherwise it becomes a little too on the nose. Second, by making a reference to a talking volleyball, people who aren't familiar with Castaway are going to be breaking out of their immersion. A talking volleyball, what the hell? Third, it'd be a much more fascinating story if MC had no survival stories as a point of reference, and any and all survival tactics that they come up with would either be by instinct or based on the rules of the Minecraft overworld itself. Some of you might be thinking I'm a little too obsessed with this one pop culture reference, but that's not the only one in this book. Near the beginning, the story references the song Once in a Lifetime by Talking Heads. The fragment of a half-remembered song floated through the fog of my amnesia. Something about finding yourself in a strange place. I couldn't remember all the lyrics, but one stuck clearly in my mind. You may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? You may ask yourself how this song got here. The inclusion of Once in a Lifetime is jarring, to put it mildly. Again, it illustrates MC's contrived amnesia for knowing more about pop culture than themselves. And much like Castaway, this song isn't even that popular with this book's demographic. I mean, is there a new pop cover of this song that I'm not aware of? The inclusion of this song from the 80s just seems to be there because of the you may find yourself or you may ask yourself parts of the lyrics. Questions like, how did I get here, aren't just brought up by old songs. That kind of questioning is human behavior in general. Why this? Why that? Why is this song in here? If references to the song were removed, it would have no real impact on the story. The song is referenced again later on in a scene between MC and a cow that they befriend. You may find yourself, I said aloud, meandering almost dreamily down the hill. As before, I couldn't recall all the lyrics. It was like trying to listen to a neighbor's radio through a wall. All I could come up with was that same one from before. And you may ask yourself, I sang to Moo, well, how did I get here? And then, looking down at my friend, asked, and why am I here? It hadn't dawned on me up until that moment that there might be a conscious reason for my entry into this bizarre, blocky world. I'd either been too busy or, let's be honest, too unwilling to even think that someone, had intentionally taken me. If there's a reason for me being here, I asked Moo, then what is it? This second passage that references this song is near the end of the book. The story is almost over at this point. It illustrates that no real big revelation about MC or their past is going to be revealed in this book. Castaway and Once in a Lifetime are only two of several pop culture references throughout this story, but those are the two that definitely stand out the most. You may ask yourself, what's the point of this story? As far as I can tell, the story is about problem solving, overcoming obstacles, and giving life lessons. For example, Chapter 1 is titled Never Give Up. This is the chapter where MC first wakes up in the Minecraft overworld and nearly drowns underwater. From the get-go, they swim all the way up to the surface out of sheer desperation. They think to themselves, swim, swim! Then when they do get to the surface, there's nothing but ocean everywhere. There's no obvious direction for MC to go at first, but then they notice that the clouds are moving away from the rising sun, so they swim in the direction due west. As they ponder on whether or not they're making the right decision, they just tell themselves, just keep going, focus on what lies ahead. So they swim in that direction, and as they do, they wonder if they're going to get tired from swimming after a while. But they just tell themselves, not yet, I'm not giving up yet, keep focused, keep going. And they finally do get to land. And after they have their little freak out about, oh, everything is made out of cubes, why is this happening to me? Their stomach starts growling. They go to look for food. They find seeds and try to eat them. It doesn't work. They try to plant them so they'll grow into something edible. It doesn't work. At this point, they are super frustrated, but they just tell themselves to keep going and not to give up. Eventually they find trees, and on those trees are apples, and they're able to get the apples, and they start eating them, much to their relief. Keep going, I said, as the entire apple disappeared into my welcoming stomach. Never give up. Without realizing it, I just learned something. Call it a mantra or a life lesson or whatever, but they were words to live by, and they'd be the first of many on this strange and wonderful journey. Never give up. MC has a problem, they find a way to overcome it, and they learn a lesson from it. Rinse and repeat. And the whole book is basically like that. Sometimes the formula works okay, other times it's preachy and cringy. I'd made so much progress, and even picked up another lesson in the process. Figuring out the rules turns them from enemies into friends. People don't talk like this. Rules cannot be your friends. Rules are not living organisms. And throughout these cringy moments, I felt like I was reading someone's playthrough of Minecraft, except they had cringy, very preachy life lessons tacked onto them. Now, you heard me talk about all the things that I don't like about this book. You may ask yourself, what did this guy like about this book? Believe it or not, there are actually a few things that I liked. There's this really cool scene where MC defeats a spider by dropping sand blocks on it. It was intense and was a very clever way of MC to defeat an opponent without the use of any kind of conventional weapon found in Minecraft. There's also this chapter where MC experiences a Minecraft update. Up to this point, MC would put a weapon in their right hand and use it, but if they put something in their left hand, a crafting menu would pop up. But in one chapter, all that changes. They wake up one day and notice that their left hand feels very tingly for some reason. You know, that's weird enough, but when MC goes to fight monsters, they notice that the monsters are a lot stronger than they used to be. This puts MC in a panic. They realize that the world around them is changing, but eventually they discover how to make a shield, and they're able to put the shield in their left hand. So now MC has the ability to dual wield. I don't think I've ever seen an in-game update presented in a story before, and I commend this chapter for doing that. But my favorite chapter is when MC is starving out of their mind because they've run out of food and they don't know how to grow crops. But they suddenly remember another source of food, and they turn to the cow that they befriended. I looked up from the crafting table into the meadow, out at the cow which had turned its back on me. My mouth filled with spit, my stomach with digestive juices. My body knew what it wanted. Images of steak filled my brain as the axe handle filled my hand. I slouched slowly across the grass, breathing heavily in a cloud of my own foul breath. The cow didn't move, munching on its last meal. Ignorant of my approach, I shuffled closer. It took no notice. Just a few more steps, just a few more seconds, and it would all be over. The cow fed peacefully. I raised the axe. Meat, food, life. The cow turned and our eyes met. Rrr. I dropped the axe. It staggered back. I'm sorry, my friend, I told the gentle beast. Because you are my friend, even though I don't deserve you. Soft heaving sobs cut into every word. I have. And only then did I realize how truly lonely I was. I might not have remembered my life from the other world and the other people I shared that life with, but I knew they had to exist. Friends, family. Why else would my soul feel as empty as my stomach? Why else had I talked to myself, materials, monsters, even the sun up above? I was trying to fight the isolation that was as deadly to my mind as starvation was to my body. Survival, I now understood, meant taking care of them both. That's why I'd always felt so comforted talking to the animals. No, they couldn't talk back, but they could feel, they could hurt, and they wanted to live just as much as I did. And sharing those basic needs meant I would never be alone. If there were more scenes like this, I would have been blown away by this book. What's wonderful about this scene is that it actually analyzes MC's psyche. It brought up their sanity, and it provided a very good explanation as to why they would talk to all the animals and monsters up to that point. It beautifully illustrates the themes of loneliness that the book is going for. But scenes like this are few and far between. Okay, so we're going to go into spoiler territory now, so if you want to skip ahead, go here. Otherwise, feel free to stick around. Earlier in the review, I mentioned that there was an underwhelming revelation about MC's past, so here it is. At one point, MC figures out how to make paintings. Now, the way these paintings work is that every time they're posted on a wall, a random image appears. I gaped at the painting that appeared. At first, I didn't think it came from either world. The subject was of a man, I think, with yellow skin, a red shirt, blue pants, and a triangular blue and red hat. At first, his crude outline looked squarish, but the thin lines just didn't match up with this world. And then it hit me. "You're King Graham," I said to the picture, "from the computer game King's Quest." So yeah, the big reveal about MC's past is that they used to play video games. That's it. Now, To the book's credit, paintings of video game characters are actually a thing in Minecraft. I just think it's highly unusual that they picked King Graham of all characters to be represented in this book. Regardless of what the reason is, this book needed a better revelation about MC's past other than the fact that they used to play video games. The other twist, I guess you could say, is the fact that MC eventually stumbles across an old abandoned mineshaft. This proves that people used to live on this island, and they either died or moved somewhere else. All this really accomplished for me, though, is that I wish MC had other sentient characters to talk to. However, this does partially inspire MC to leave the island. They want to do so that they can search other lands for people like them, or even a way home. So when all is said and done, Minecraft the Island feels like a playthrough told in novel form, and ultimately feels like a prologue to something bigger. Each chapter has a life lesson attached to it, and it's often contrived, and it feels like it often talks down to the reader. In fact, there's an entire section in the last chapter that's dedicated to listing all the different lessons learned in this book. I wanted to read a story, not prepare for a quiz. I mean, I know MC left the book behind so that other people who find it can have an easier time living in the Minecraft overworld, but that's just ridiculous. All the things that I mention in this review wouldn't irritate me so much if it weren't for the fact that this is the first officially endorsed Minecraft novel by Mojang. I would think that the company that made Minecraft would endorse a book of a much higher caliber. But if you absolutely had to experience this story, there is a way that I would recommend you do it. By audiobook. What's cool is that there are actually 2 different audiobooks for this. One by Samira Wiley, the other by Jack Black. Both of them are really good, but I have to give the edge to Jack Black. You can definitely tell by his delivery that he's much more familiar with Minecraft, and the way he delivers it is almost like he's at a campfire and he's telling the story to a bunch of kids and their parents. He does a fantastic job, and if you had to experience the story, the Jack Black audiobook is 100% the way to go. There are a lot more Minecraft novels, and I'll get to them eventually. For Minecraft the Island, the first officially endorsed Minecraft novel, I wish both Mojang and Max Brooks had better tools and better material to make a better story. Fun little fact, I listened to the audiobook and I bookmarked it in the middle of a sentence. The sentence is, I came up with the notion of rubbing 2 sticks together. I bookmarked it in the middle of the sentence and this is what happened. I came up with the notion of rubbing 2
dicks together, 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 dicks together,